And very quickly, just to touch on with the sealers, if you're going to use them over stain, and for no other reason, if you don't feel that a sealer offers you more build, that's fine. But the one thing, especially with PALL-X Color, that you'll get is you will get a sharper, richer color over the life of that floor. Especially, I see it a lot when you do colors like coffee brown, antique, spice. Apply PALL-X Color over the top, and it will lock in that color, and it'll remain vibrant over the life of that floor. Versus if you go finish direct, where a lot of waterborne products historically have gotten the rap that over time they get kind of hazy. Sealers help prevent that.
Awesome. Well, I think today you guys wanted to talk about your water-based finish line, some of the sealers that you guys carry and some of the finishes, and kind of go through your water-based finish line, correct?
Absolutely. So, I mean, at Pallmann, we're definitely a system-oriented company, and we firmly believe that the foundation for every finished floor starts with a good sealer. And so that's where I wanted to start today, if that works with you.
Yeah, let's hear about your sealers.
All right, so we've got our two core sealers that we've got are Clear and Color. Both of those sealers are meant to be applied directly over a sanded surface, or they can be applied directly over a stain. The beauty of these sealers are, one, they do not need to be abraded before you apply any of our finishes over the top, because they've got such a strong chemical bond between themselves and the finish that's applied over the top. So literally, you can go anywhere from 4 hours to 4 days before you need to, without having any concern about abrading before you apply your coat of finish, literally. So that's saving a contractor a step. And I typically recommend to go ahead and seal the floor, let that sealer dry, vac and tack it when you're ready for your first coat of finish, apply your first coat, and then abrade. PALL-X Clear, as we call it, it's just that. It's a clear sealer, doesn't have any pigment or color added to it, and it's designed to be used directly over lighter species like a maple or a hickory, anything that you don't want to add any color to. Or you can use it over a pastel stain like a gray or a white, which is more popular these days.
Gotcha.
And then when we talk about PALL-X Color, that I kind of talk about that in terms of a sealer that's meant to react with the tannins of the wood to sort of intensify the natural color. Where when you pour out PALL-X Color right onto an oak floor, it's going to look white initially. There's no amber pigment added to it or anything of that nature, but it reacts with the tannins to give you the appearance somewhere between a neutral stain and an oil modified sealer.
Okay, gotcha. So those are your sealers. Now, you talked about you put it over raw wood, you can put it over stain. Is there a specific way that you recommend applying it? I know a lot of guys have anything from T-bars to brushes to rollers to anything like that. Now, do you guys recommend a specific way, or do you exclude any types of applications?
I really don't exclude any sort of application with either one of our sealers. You can roll them, you can use a T-bar, you can use a flat pad, or even a brush to cut in the edges. The only, and generally speaking, I'm going to pour it right out on the floor and I'm going to work with it. Now, if I was working with a more porous species, something in the fir family or a pine, I might actually dip and roll, just because when you pour out onto those species of wood, you can get some marks on the floor where that sealer is going to soak in a lot faster and a lot deeper than the rest.
Gotcha. Is that also a little bit of a risk in drier climates like Denver, places like that at all?
Potentially it could be. I mean, I've done a lot of work out there, but yeah, absolutely, that could be something that you'd see out there.
Okay. So then you got Color and Clear. I know there's some peculiarities with Clear in terms of species that you guys recommend to not use it on. What are those? American cherry can have some odd looking results. And myself personally, with just black walnut, it has less to do with a reaction with the species itself, but just the absorption into that wood when it's applied. You can get applicator marks relatively easy with black walnut. Other than that, I really haven't had any issues. Okay, so then with like black walnut and cherry, you'd probably want to steer away from a clear, stick with the color sealer.
Right, or even go to a neutral stain.
Or just stain and put poly over the top of that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the sealers. Talked a little bit about the hot coat time. So it's up to 4 days.
And actually, I used 4 days as an example. Literally, it's infinite. It could be a week. It could be a month. You do not have to abrade before your first coat.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's your water-based sealer line. Tell us a little bit about the water-based finishes, and then you'd put over the top of that.
Well, the water-based finish line, we've got 3 entries. We've got 96 Next Gen, we've got PALL-X Power, and then we've got PALL-X Gold. 96 Next Gen, which is the, we'll say the newest addition to the line in terms of 96. That finish is the product that put Pallmann on the map when they came over to the United States back in 2007. And the main reason for that was how easy it was to apply. It was clear, and it was virtually foolproof. I mean, that's part of the reason why I work for the company today. At the time, I was selling mechanical fasteners and pneumatic tools, and I was doing a floor at home, and had a gallon of 96 and put it down on some maple. First coat looked like a final. I mean, it's just unbelievable how well it performs.
Yeah.
And then back about almost 3 years ago, we came out with a new single component, and that's PALL-X Power. Now, this product is built on a completely different platform in terms of, the chemical resistance, durability, cure time. It has a lot of the features and benefits that you would expect from some of the 2-component finishes, but in a single component package, which really cuts down on your waste, which is huge for contractors.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then lastly, we've got PALL-X Gold, which is it's an isocyanate hardened 2-component product. And, the biggest differential between Gold and Power is the fact that, Gold will cure in 3 days and give you a little bit more chemical resistance, where Power cures in 5 days. So those are the biggest differences between those 2 products.
Gotcha. Now, when you talk about chemical resistance, what would be an example? Is that like nail polish spilled on a floor or something along those lines?
It's a great question, because it seems like more and more these days, when I look at a floor that's got an issue with chemical intrusion, I think a lot of consumers mistake chemical resistance for chemical proof. I don't think there's anybody in this industry that offers a chemical proof finish that can be applied on site. Yeah. And so when you talk about nail polish, if that doesn't get cleaned up right away, that could absolutely turn into a repair. Sure. And so again, the 2-component finishes are going to give you or offer the highest protection when it comes to chemical intrusion, but it's certainly not going to be anything resembling chemical proof.
Right, sure, yeah. So those kinds of things, like the main difference between the Power, which is your single component, and then the Gold would be your cure time is going to be a little bit faster with the Gold. You're looking at 3 days for that. And then the Power, the cure time on that, is it 5 days?
It's 5 days. And all 3 of our waterborne products, the lion's share of that cure takes place in that first 24 hours. While it's hard to assign a specific number to it, it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of that curing is taking place in the first 24 hours.
Gotcha. That's pretty fast and pretty high for those 24 hours. So, okay. So are all your finishes, and the sealer goes down first, but are all your finishes compatible with one another in terms of building coats up on top?
Absolutely. So, we do have people that use what we like to refer to as a hybrid system. Well, they'll apply, after they've sealed the floor, they'll apply one of our single component finishes, and they'll top coat. We'll use 96 Next Gen as an example. They'll use Next Gen as a base coat, and then they'll come in and they'll abrade and they'll apply either Power or Gold over the top. Okay. And really the most important aspect of using the hybrid system is proper abrasion, which again seems to be, That's one of those things that I've really started talking to contractors a lot about over the last couple of years. Just because the one thing that I typically notice when I'm visiting a job site is contractors that are using, especially the rolled tape abrasive, they tend to push that abrasive a little bit too far. Where when I talk to my friends at Norton, they talk about per setup on a maroon pad, say we're using a 150 or a 180 tape. You know, you want to change that tape about every 150 feet to every 200 square feet. Where once you get past that, one, you're not putting a good scratch in it, and two, you're probably in some ways doing the opposite of what you're trying to accomplish, which is you're starting to polish the floor, which is not going to give you a good mechanical bond. And so with all of our finishes, you can use anything from a 120 to 180 grit. We're not fans of 220 just because it does not put a good enough scratch in to guarantee a good bond between your waterborne products. Myself personally, 150 or 180. I know some people get a little bit nervous with 180 because they worry about swirls, but obviously our friends at Norton have some great options for us. You know, there's tape. There's a few different types of screens. You know, the Durite screens, those will get you anywhere from, 300 to 350 square feet per side. Red heat screens will get you about 500 per side. Sand dollars and mesh power will get you, upwards of 750 square feet. So good abrasion is really the key to, a good finish coat.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of that abrasion, you were talking about a hybrid system where you've got 96 down and you want to coat over it with either a power or a gold. Let's just say you're abrading power or you're just abrading gold for your final coat. Or do the same rules apply in terms of changing a sticky sandpaper out every 100 feet or 150 feet? Or is that going to be just more of you're going to get more square footage out of the sandpaper?
So is your question is if we're coating gold over gold?
Yeah, I guess my question was, do those sandpaper rules apply to coating over 96 or is that for all of your finishes?
All the way through. So any form of a hybrid system, if you're putting gold over power, gold over 96 next gen, or power over 96 next gen, those are the abrading guidelines that we suggest.
Gotcha. How about if you're just using the same product? You're coating power 2 or 3 times, you're coating gold 2 or 3 times.
With those products, if you're using one over the other in terms of just 2 coats of power, you've got a 24-hour window where you could hot coat. So conceivably, if your first coat, if you are happy with the aesthetics and with the texture, if it's inside 24 hours, you could just hot coat that final coat. Gotcha. And the same with gold as well, and even with 96 next gen. Yep. All 3 of our products, once you get outside of that 24-hour window, that's when you want to go ahead and put a scratch in that so you can get that mechanical bond.
Gotcha. So within 24 hours, you're basically just buffing it for the smoothness, for the aesthetic, to get anything off the floor, but it doesn't affect the adhesion at all. So
absolutely.
So in terms of screen and recoats, between those 3 polys, is there one you recommend over and above the other? Can you use power and gold in 96? Like, what do you guys recommend if guys are wanting to use your finish for a screen and recoat?
Well, somebody's going to do a screen and recoat, and they've done all the prep work. They've done all of the cleaning. If they're going to apply a waterborne product, literally any 3 of the products in our lineup would work good for a recoat. We're talking about a floor that they've cleaned, they've done a test spot, they've checked their adhesion. 2-component isocyanate products, they generally bond a little bit better than traditional single components. So, gold and power would run neck and neck probably in terms of adhesion, in terms of best adhesion. And a lot of people generally are drawn to a 2-component just because of that quicker cure.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Now, something interesting that I learned when I was at your training center was that in terms of your sealers versus your polys, one of the reasons why you'd put a sealer down first is that the sealer has got bigger solids or bigger molecular whatever terminology you want to use. So it's going to sit more on top of the floor, and you're going to get a lot more build with that, putting a sealer down and then a coat of poly over the top, as opposed to just 2 coats of poly.
Yeah.
So I guess, is that correct? Talk a little bit about that.
No, absolutely. And that's one of the great benefits of our sealers. You know, I've talked to several contractors that their system is, hey, I'll stain a floor and I'll put down 3 coats of Pallmann Finish. Mm-hmm. And they think that, you know, they're giving their customer a great floor. In some respects, they are. But really, when we're talking especially about a stained surface, even though a lot of the stain manufacturers say that the product is a stain and a sealer, when we're using a waterborne product, there's still some amount of that finish that's going to get drawn into the wood if we go finish direct over the stained surface.
Yeah.
Where if we use either one of the Pallmann sealers, yes, you're absolutely right. The molecules of those products are larger, and they do a better job of sealing off the grain and plugging up the pores of the wood. So now we can stack 2 coats on top. I mean, who figured sealers are a better sealer than finishes are? And the other benefit for the contractor is, I mean, if they're going to do a 3-coat system with a waterborne product, yeah, you stain, sealer, and then 2 coats, because the other thing, they're going to save a little bit of money on the sealer versus putting down 3 coats of finish.
Yeah.
And in large part, they're going to achieve the same finished product.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. You save more money and you get actually more build on top of the floor starting out with that sealer. So, in terms of your finishes, 96 gold power, is there any way that you recommend applying those? Any type of applicator, anything you exclude on those?
With all 3 of our products, as forgiving as they are, you can use a roller. You can pour it out and roll it. You can dip into a bucket and roll it. You can use a T-bar. You can use a flat pad. You can use a brush. You can even use a hockey stick. I mean, it is that easy to put down. I mean, that is literally been the draw for those products. It's just the ease of application. I mean, probably the most important thing to keep in mind is when I look at a floor where there's concerns about premature wear, typically that floor has had the finish applied with a T-bar. And that's where when I like to talk to contractors about the T-bar head they're using, the stick they're using, because no matter how light of a touch or how light of a grip they have on that applicator when they're applying, it's the weight of the T-bar and the pull that are dictating the mill thickness. And so if they've got a heavier weighted metal head and they've got a solid pull versus a hollow aluminum one, they're going to put their finish on a little bit thinner. Sure. And so they're not going to hit that coverage rate of 450 to 500 that we like to talk about. Yeah. And so obviously, you know, there's not going to be as much protection on that floor. And so that's not to say that T-bar's the wrong choice. Just need to be more cognizant of the fact that it's the weight of that applicator that is going to dictate your mill thickness, and to just be very cognizant not to put any pressure on it. Whereas when you roll product, you have a lot more control over how much finish you apply. And it's my personal feeling that typically you can hit those coverage rates a little bit easier with a roller.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's from my experience in a place like Denver that's a little bit drier, guys are coating heavier anyway, but then you'll come to a place where they're used to coating a little bit thinner, like Houston, Texas might be an example.
Right.
So they're probably pulling that out a little bit more. So you guys recommend, you said 450 to 500 is kind of your window on that?
Yeah, on all of our, 96 Next Gen, PALL-X Power, PALL-X Gold, and then both of our sealers, we say 450 to 500. I mean, obviously, when we're looking at a floor that's got stain, sealer, and 2 coats, by the time we get to that last coat, yeah, we might be sniffing 550 square feet per gallon just because we've got that floor sealed up so much, and there's only so much, only so much finish that you can apply.
Sure. And all your stains and sealers, anything guys should know in terms of the prep, or is it just shake the bottle up and put it on the floor?
With all of our single component products, I like to recommend that you shake it for about a minute just to get it agitated before you start applying it.
Sure.
You know, and then very quickly, just to touch on with the sealers, if you're going to use them over stain, and for no other reason, if you don't feel that a sealer offers you more build, that's fine. But the one thing, especially with PALL-X Color, that you'll get is you will get a sharper, richer color over the life of that floor. Especially, I see it a lot when you do colors like coffee brown, antique, spice. Apply PALL-X Color over the top, and it will lock in that color, and it'll remain vibrant over the life of that floor. Versus if you go finish direct, where a lot of waterborne products historically have gotten the rap that over time they get kind of hazy. Sealers help prevent that.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Now, one question I like to ask is if a contractor was going to mess any of these products up, and they will find a way to do it, what are the easiest pitfalls they can avoid, either with your sealer or your finish? Like, what are just some of the quick, hey, don't do's? I know we talked about with clear, don't put it on American cherry, don't put it on walnut, use color for that. What are some other pitfalls that guys can avoid with your finish lineup?
Generally, spreading it too thin, that's going to come up and bite them, just because that floor is going to probably wear prematurely.
Yep.
You know, especially when we're talking about sealers, is coating over stains too quickly. I recognize that there are stain manufacturers out there that tout a 2-hour dry time before they can be coated over. You know, a thing to keep in mind is all of those stain manufacturers, I have no quarrel with any of them out there. The one thing they do talk about is that 2 hours is under ideal circumstances or ideal climate conditions. And so if you're in South Florida in July, it's going to be humid, and that stain is not going to be ready to coat in 2 hours in a lot of scenarios. So I think rushing the system is generally one of the pitfalls. And that's across the board, is just getting on a stain too quick. You know, we talked about, you know, the using too heavy of an applicator, applying thin coats.
Yep.
And then, you know, just improper abrasion. Those are the things that, if I'm out on a job site looking at a floor that a contractor may have struggled with, those are generally the 3 things that I usually see that will hang them up.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, that's been great, Gene. Is there anything else you want to talk about or cover with any of those products?
No, I think we've got it all covered. Really appreciate being invited, and I know that Trevor and RJ are anxious for their turn to present here on Shop Talk, and
Yeah.
one of the 2 of them will probably be on next month with you.
Awesome. We'll look forward to it. Appreciate you coming on, Gene, and appreciate you sharing a little bit of knowledge about the products with us. So appreciate everybody for watching. So we'll see and talk to you all later.